Peter Thomas Fornatale of the In the Money Players podcast, the In the Money Media YouTube channel, back with you. Very happy to look ahead to some of the joys of being a horse player in the summer meets, as we call them, Saratoga in this show, Del Mar in another show. Going to look at them a little differently. These are meets that many horsemen, owners point to. And to me, what I always say about that is changes the dynamic a little. Obviously, the fundamentals of handicapping, form study, whatever you want to call it, they remain. But I do think it's not unfair to call these both angle meets. And when it comes to looking at angles, there are two people and entities we turn to. One, the big general one, RaceLens. If you don't know about RaceLens, we'll tell you a little bit more about them later in the show. Great way to process data for the horse player. Equibase.com. Click on the RaceLens tab. Learn more. Later on, I'm going to tell you about some of the promotions they have going on. And then the man we love to bring in to interpret RaceLens data for us and do some of this deep dive research. He's a power user from there. He's an NHC final table participant. He's a very respected horse player. He's Matt Vagvolgyi. Matt, how are things?
Things are good, Pete. We're ready. We're off and running at Saratoga, which is not the norm, but certainly a good thing. So, so longest meet of Saratoga, getting on in my backyard here, and certainly getting over there and enjoying it. But it's nice to have Del Mar hitting as well on Friday, so you get kind of both in most days here. So summer is just about to get going.
I did hear from a viewer, and they were being polite about it. They weren't being cheeky, but asking, why this Saratoga preview hadn't dropped already. And I mean, frankly, the answer for me is it hasn't really gotten to be Saratoga yet. We're still sort of in this, Belmont, that Saratoga feeling stuff. And it's been great, but when I think Saratoga, I think August place to be. I think about everything that's still ahead of us. And I also like the idea that we'll have some statistical information to mine from the last couple of months as well. So hopefully, obviously with all these weeks of Saratoga still in front of us, I still think this is going to be super useful information. How do you treat these non-traditional Saratoga days when you're doing your modeling, when you're looking at stats for Saratoga? I mean, to me, it's all relevant. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I do, and I think it's better to be kind of less is more early on. Spots I do like, I'll play, but for the most part, I'm watching. Like, to be honest, I watched the majority of the whole weekend last weekend. But I'll go through my process. I'll run my models. I'll do all that, whatever, my entire process, start to finish, and then kind of recap it from there. Because I mean, I've just, I've hit some pretty tough walls betting, pretty hard early on. And I've learned many years ago to take it a bit slower. And now that this meet has extended the way that it has, again, not that I'm not looking forward to it. It's just, to me, the real meet of Saratoga is the end of July, August, traditionally what it's been. And that's where to me, where the best opportunities lie. And just every single weekend is a hard hitting stakes, weekend. So, I like to take in kind of what the track is doing, anything that sticks out to me that I want to revisit. But it doesn't allow me to fall into some pitfalls I've done in the past. So it's more taking it in than betting early on.
Putting the toe in the pool first, not diving in head first, to use an analogy that's very relevant on this current California swing that I'm on. Let's look at some of these statistics, and we're going to start off with one that I think is contrarian. To my horse player understanding, when you're looking at a track that has a chute like Saratoga, I'm assuming that it's a little bit tricky to break from down at the rail at 7 furlongs. That's sort of an old horse player saw. The numbers tell us a little bit of a different story. Why don't you talk us through what you found here in terms of Saratoga key post positions?
Yeah, they certainly do. And that's why I put it up here. And again, just as we do with all of these here, I'm trying to highlight things you can do with RaceLens and answer a question that you may think is obvious. And sometimes it does come back obvious. Sometimes it doesn't, right? So sometimes you can also put that into context of other things. But I thought this was interesting here as well. I mean, obviously it's going to be dependent on the horse. There's extra work that needs to go in here, but looking at it from an ROI perspective, I think it fits exactly what you just said, Pete. I think there's a bit of dismissal from those rail horses going 7 furlongs on the dirt because of that. And you can see, I mean, the win percentages are not jumping off the page, but I think in the same breath they should not be dismissed either. So again, 57 stars, not the biggest sample, with 18% winners, but a really healthy ROI of 65%. And then looking at, so that's from last meet coming into this year. Looking at it from this meet so far, it looks like it's continuing. Obviously, you have a bomb in there for that ROI, but again, seeing the percentage hold and tick up, the in the money percentage tick up. So again, I think there's some there when it comes to having the rail at 7 furlongs. And I think you're getting a bit better of a price than you should be, because I think of what you just said, Pete, of a bit being more dismissive of those horses coming out of the chute.
This doesn't mean automatically bet them, but it does mean don't dismiss them. Now, the other post position stat we're going to talk about here, this one is a bit more intuitive when you're looking at a 2-turn race. All the routes at Saratoga are 2 turns. So you're looking at a mile or further. And I would say, as expected, the outside post, I was going to say they underperform, but there may be some small sample caveats here with just the 28 starts, but that win percentage is pretty low.
Yeah, you can't get lower than that, right? Now, there's a reason why I showed this one. Is obviously when you think of this of, yes, 10 plus, a lot of races aren't really coming up with post positions of 10 or more. What I will say is they've already carded 4 of these already this year. So anytime I see a trend going in a direction where I don't really see a lot of these carded, I want to dig into that a little bit more and try to see, is there any kind of history to this? That's why I showed that one there. Again, small sample for 5 years, but when I see that many races come back of having that stat fit, I want to know. I mean, is there some equity there? Is this something that's going to be a blind dismissal that the public leaves alone and you start getting bigger prices? The answer is no. And I just think of those quick turns that come up, just continue to put horses in tough positions. You're not going to get it out of the Wilson chute, but that's another one I would pay attention to. If you're like 6+, I would really pay attention to that. Play around with some of those angles in RaceLens. I think there's some clear, definitive data that comes from that. But yeah, looking at from those outside post positions, 10+, how have they done? Considering I'm seeing more of these races being carded, certainly has not been a profitable angle. So it's a horse that I would discount, and a horse that I hope would maybe take some money where it would allow some equity to be built. So for some other horses in that particular race, but that's kind of the context around it. Seeing more today than I have in the past.
Sure. I realized I misspoke. Of course, I was some sort of mental block about the existence of the Wilson chute there. Those are mile races that are not, they're not 1 turn, they're not 2 turn, right? They're a little bit of a tweener, but it is also logical. We have said many times, we're a little bit worried about how the outside posts perform on that chute. Now, I don't know how many 10-runner Wilson chute races there've really been, so I don't know how baked into the cake that even is there. But just to underline, even in the Wilson chute, you're going to be a little bit wary of taking horses that are drawn far outside, especially as the fields get bigger. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah, for sure. That's why I mentioned, like, I would say 6+ when you look at the Wilson chute is where that starts to play into me. But I would dig into that and see, like, look at what your inside horses are doing, the pace profile. Like when I speed map races, I mean, there's really good horses that get stuck in really bad positions when you're posted in those spots. So I think it's real, especially with the Wilson chute. Again, I throw that out there, dive into that a bit, because I think you can find some interesting stuff. But beyond the Wilson chute, though, again, just kind of confirming what I thought would be the case versus the other one. It may be contrary to what you're thinking. This one does fit, and I am seeing more of these races carded with these types of fields. So just kind of food for thought when you look at those races.
That's good stuff for folks to explore on their own if they're RaceLens users, but I'm going to say this out loud to hopefully hold myself to it. This could be a good written article at some point during the meet to dive into the Wilson chute data and maybe just do a little piece on it that I'll post over at inthemoneypodcast.com. Of course, we have free analysis of both Saratoga and, well, mostly Del Mar. We'll have the free analysis of Del Mar there every day. We will have some Saratoga articles as well. Mostly Saratoga written-wise is going to be covered on the In the Money Plus side we've got Nick Tamaro doing Nick's notebook every day, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus to check that out. But I will try to get an article up there I want to do, I look at RaceLens obviously, but I haven't done like a deep dive written piece. The Wilson Shoes might be a really interesting one because I do think the races there, things are run a little different. I'm going to take a 2-second break here just while I tell you about some of the promos RaceLens has going on. Then we're going to return to these angles. The race to the National Horse Players Championship is back. This is a great way to win into the NHC. If you're a RaceLens customer, you basically get it to be in a series of RaceLens only customers over the summertime, and then you qualify basically for a final tournament where you can win an NHC seat. It's a great thing. It's only available to RaceLens subscribers. Go to equibase.com, click RaceLens to learn more. And then there's other promotions going on as well. There's a 30% off all RaceLens and Equibase past performance subscriptions. The promo code for that one, EQBBC30. And then there is also the terrific new customer promo that they've been doing for a while, where you can get the unlimited sub for a month for just $1. That's really one. If you're new to this, check it out. I mean, it's a no-fail thing. RLBC1 for that one. But you can find these. You don't have to remember those codes. You can go back and rewind and listen to them again if you want. But you can also just go to equibase.com, click on that RaceLens tab, and you'll see all of that information. Let's get back. One of the things about Saratoga, we don't always like to talk about that much. The weather can be unpredictable, and you did a little bit of work looking at what happens in off tracks at the spa. Matt, tell us what you found.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx anything because the weather's been pretty good so far. But like you said, at Saratoga, we've seen beautiful days turn into the end of the world. So, and the track does change quite a bit, and they do a great job with it. But again, sloppy tracks is something you got to take a look at, or at least have in your in your toolbox when you're looking at Saratoga. I always like to revisit dirt sprints, even routes, and looking at condition of the track. Has anything changed? And I thought this one jumped out at me on dirt sprints. That idea of speed. The cleanest horse, being the one that always wins the race. Hasn't been the case. I mean, again, smaller sample. We had a good year last year in terms of weather, so we didn't have a lot of off the turf races on sloppy tracks. Again, specifically for a sloppy track here, with 23 starts, but again, just 4% winners. Not a lot of them hitting the board either. 24% of them hitting the board, and a negative 90% ROI. So again, when you're on the lead of the first call, it doesn't tend to be a fruitful endeavor. So again, looking at it from a pace angle on those sloppy tracks, something you may want to consider when you're looking at off track, sloppy track. And then again, this is not one of those ones I always feel like it's easy to look at the main track onlys when it comes off the turf, right? That's what they're listed for. That's what they're there for. I have never seen a track in my life that continues to bet turf horses as if they were still running on the turf like Saratoga.
Right. So, betting the numbers in the form, not thinking about the surface, right? Is that what you're talking about?
100%. And again, there's no other track, in my opinion, in my, decades plus in this game, I've never seen it more at a track like Saratoga, where I am scratching my head wondering, why are they still betting this horse down when this horse is 100% meant for the turf? So again, looking at it from a main track only standpoint, I mean, these horses are well meant, right? So, I mean, again, high win percentage, 38%. I mean, hitting the board an awful lot. You're still getting the positive ROIs. That's the reason why I wanted to put this out there, Pete. It's not something that's getting absolutely destroyed on the board. I think they're being dismissed a little bit, I would say, relative to that win percentage. Again, smaller sample based on what we had last year. But again, these storms can come rolling in. We're going to have a lot of these races. I would take a look at the main track onlys and see if you can find maybe some of those turf horses that still get bet and may have an opportunity there.
I love that we've been trying that and doing that successfully for years, and it's good to know that the numbers stay. It's still working. The off-track lead at the first call one is bizarre to me. I mean, but it could have something to do with racetrack composition. I always like to put a little bit of a mental narrative to a stat before I'm going to bet on it. It is possible that the inside gets a little bit deeper, and maybe horses are being disadvantaged who are going to the lead, and this could just also be small sample size stuff. But I have noticed, and this backs up the stat, that sometimes it's the clean horse stalking as opposed to the clean horse on the lead. Now, I would not use this stat personally to bet against a horse that I was going to put on the lead in a race. I am curious though, is this enough of a sample? Is this stark enough of a poor ROI that you would start to actually actively look for front runners on off tracks to bet against? Or is it just more of a caveat in the back of your mind right now?
I think it's a caveat, but it also, when I dig into the charts on this particular stack, that's a good thing. When you have a small sample, you could really dig into the charts, and you can do that in RaceLens. Once you create an angle, you select it on the bottom, you can then dig into the charts below it. When you look at those particular races, a lot of jockeys with the same idea, right? So the idea of getting to the front has caused some pretty good pace duels up front, and I think that's been kind of the biggest, I would say, tilt as to why that stat the way it is. Now, you give me a lone speed on an off track, I mean, yeah, I'm certainly not going to dismiss it. I mean, that's kind of handicapping 101. But when you're in a position like this where you see multiple horses going to the front, and I do agree with that. I think sometimes the inside gets a little bit deep at Saratoga when you get into the stretch, and these horses kind of looking at the charts, these horses finished second to last when you're in these speed duels. So they do fall out of the number, and you show it in the money statistic there too. So yeah, I think it's pace dependent, but again, I also think it's something to at least consider. But I like to, if I'm seeing a horse that has a clear pace advantage on an off track, that's certainly something I will dismiss that particular statistic for that.
It's an interesting point, though, also about if you're building, say, trifecta tickets in a situation like that, the fact that so few of them are even hanging on to hit the board. Maybe even if you have a horse that you're putting on the lead in a wet track sprint on your horizontals, maybe you want to play a set of vertical tickets with the horse completely out and either play an all closers ticket or, a stock all closers with a stalker or two and try to get paid that way. And interesting ideas. And it's one of the things I love about RaceLens and these conversations we have, Matt, is it's just food for thought. And I think that's good for a horse player to be constantly trying to think of new ways of looking at the game. Because, in these markets that are so efficient, it's the new ideas that might end up being profitable for the while, as opposed to just doing. As important as the fundamentals are to know, it's very hard to make money just doing the fundamentals. Getting that extra little 2% from here or there or everywhere often will be the thing that puts you on a winning run, at least for a while. Let's look at some of the shippers coming into Saratoga. And this is very interesting, especially because I swear the second one we're about to talk about here flipped the script from a previous conversation we had, where I remember the Woodbine shippers not doing well. Historically, I remember them doing well. Interesting to see that might be turning back around. But let's start off with what you found about the Churchill shippers.
Yeah, I feel like this particular stat is like sponsored by Churchill, because I talk about it, I think, every year, but I have to. I'm forced to, because it's something that can't be more obvious, that continues to come back with a high strike rate. Again, you're getting a decent sample there. You're getting a good ROI percentage, and you're still getting a positive 19% ROI of these horses coming in from Churchill on the dirt. And they're just proving every single year. That stat over 5 years now is positive. So that stat is a positive 7% over 5 years with a boatload of races coming in. So it does encapsulate when Saratoga made that change in the surface to be more of a clay base, which is, again, very similar to what Churchill has. And again, it's very intuitive, but it surprises me that I continue to see that these horses are still being dismissed a bit. You're still getting a solid ROI. So again, for another year in a row, Pete, I'm adding the Churchill shippers coming in on the dirt. The Woodbine one that you're starting to get a little bit more of a sample. Now you're looking at 14 starts. You're saying, well, Matt, come on, that's not a big sample. It's steadily increasing over time, right? So that's why I like to add these here. When I do add some of these smaller samples, it's a lot of it, like I mentioned before, is I'm seeing the momentum starting to come where that particular type of horse or that particular type of angle will be more prevalent. So at least gives you an idea of what you have to work with so far. But no, they're hitting it at a decent rate, but they're also hitting at prices too. So you're getting paid for these horses coming down from Woodbine. And I think also too, with the changes they've made fairly recently, right, with addition of their turf courses. So the amount of turf races at Woodbine are increasing exponentially. I think, where it allows just for more by the numbers to be present. So again, something to look out for. Again, I think it's a solid return and for a type of ship that's becoming more prevalent at Saratoga.
Right. Well, with the Taylor being renovated up at Woodbine, and that will be ready soon, but it does make sense that a certain type of turf horse, you might see a few more of them in these higher class races earlier in the meet. If for whatever reason they think they want a wider turn, they don't want to deal with the inner up there. There's a logic to this Woodbine stat being important as these races go on at Saratoga this meet for a couple of different reasons. And I've told this story before, but forgive me. I just remember many, many moons ago doing a much more ham-handed type of analysis of stats for Horse Player magazine, back when it was a physical book. Frank Scattoni was the editor, Tom Quigley, the publisher, and I used to write for them. And I did a stats piece pulling, I think I was pulling some of the data manually. And Woodbine shippers were this big positive angle at Saratoga for years. And then it seemed to go the other way. It seems to be coming back. The Churchill one, I can't believe it's been 5 years of positive. That's remarkable. But it is also very, very logical. You mentioned about the racing surface changing. The other thing that's changed, and they're not sponsors of this video, but I got to give credit where credit's due. The KTDF and all this extra money in purses in Kentucky becoming this year-long racing scene. I just think it's elevated. All that extra money due to the KTDF has elevated racing in Kentucky to a point where it doesn't surprise me one bit that they're coming in here and having terrific success at Saratoga. Got one more slide that we want to show you here from Saratoga. And this one has to do with class droppers, because this is one we've talked about. I think we've talked about pretty much on every one of these shows, how class drops at Saratoga can be class drops in the modern game, first and foremost, are so different than they used to be. When they used to be, usually, I would say, when I started handicapping, Matt, a big negative anytime you saw a big class drop. And that's changed writ large over the industry in 2026. And nowhere is that more true than Saratoga. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, I know we do. It's one of my favorite ones to talk about, because again, it's becoming obvious, right? But again, you look at some of these drops and you're just normally any other place you would say, I've got to find a way to bet against this horse or something's up here. Not the case, right? So you're seeing it from a general standpoint, from a maiden claiming stance. You're still getting paid on this though, Pete, right? You're still getting paid on these horses taking these massive class drops. Again, decent strike percentage, but again, you're finding prices there. What I like to find, and what I always like to highlight on the shows we do every year on a RaceLens perspective, is you can run angles specific to ownership groups. So as anything you pull from the charts, you can pull in through RaceLens and kind of dice and add and subtract how you see fit. I think I've talked about Klarvich the last probably, 3 years of this just being off the charts. I think Flying P Stables have taken it over, because this dude just wants to win, and it was so evident last year. And this has been a trend if you look at it from a progression over the last few years. But looking at it last year, 14 starters, but when you're hitting at almost a 50% clip and you're still positive double digits on the ROI department, tells me two things. Number one, intent is very much wanting to win a title at Saratoga and willing to drop these horses in where they feel very confident they can win. That's showing up. And the second part is just the logical handicapper saying, I've got to bet against this horse. There's a reason why this horse is dropping. I got to try to find a spot to go elsewhere. I think the combination of the two, Pete, is what you're seeing. So I don't know. I feel like every year I'll bring in a new stable that wants to chase a title, but this is kind of the flavor of last year, Pete.
I love it. Jay and his team do a great job. We've had him on the In the Money airwaves before. Matt, always a pleasure to have you on the In the Money airwaves. We'll do another show with you on Del Mar. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you click over there. If you're somebody who looks at stats at Saratoga, drop us a comment. Let us know a stat that you're following. You got a lot of sharp viewers and commenters out there. Always appreciate seeing those comments below the videos. Let us know what you got cooking, because we want to hear. Let's get a whole discussion going. Make sure you check out equibase.com to see those promos we talked about RaceLens, Race for the NHC. That's a great opportunity, as well as all these discounted plans. And while you're here, make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel.